Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. We're outside of our last build, which is also on the Build School server. I've been up to some more building. And not quite with the rest of this build because I've decided it's finished. Anyway, I've been doing some more building and I wanted to build a factory. And I saw some really cool art and even I got inspired by some actual factories that I saw on my Europe trip, which again, this build was from my Europe trip, if you didn't see my last video. But we've been chatting for too long. Without further ado, let's get into the time lapse, and then we can see the final build and talk about it once it's over. Let's go! Now I do like this build, but I think that it would look really cool if I added some smoke around the chimneys. And you know how much I love doing smoke and fire glasswork, especially. So let's do that together. So this is a really good time for me to explain my very delicate process of how I do glasswork and smoke with my builds, because I've done a few of it before, and I'll pop some of those on the screen. Now, when I'm doing glasswork for smoke, it's really important that you go in with a very impeccable plan and you are ready to just hit Angel Place on Axiom and just spam a bunch of blocks around. So realistically, honestly, that isn't even bad, but we're not going to leave it like that, I promise. But if you get Angel Place on with Axiom, which of course Axiom is a mod that's very helpful for some building things. It's got some fast place and Angel Place. And Angel Place basically just means I can place it in midair. And you can see our little hoverboard thing. And Angel Place is really helpful for smoke and glass work for that reason. So I don't think we'll put smoke in every single chimney. I think maybe just these two, because I think if we put it in each one, it might be a bit overbearing. So when I do glasswork, I'll try and, with the Angel Place of course, just mark out where I want the glass to go. See, that's a little bit too straight for me, so we're going to make it a little bit whimsy around the side. Now, if you're not sure about what kind of colour the smoke should be for whatever build you're doing, it's also really important to have some reference images. Now, from the top of my head, I can remember that basically all factory, or at least this factory that I've decided to build is going to have white smoke, I guess steam maybe, I'm not too sure, but we're just going to have some plain white smoke. And I've got some light grey glass just to give it a bit of texture, which we'll do in a little bit later. Now, okay, so I think we have to Yeah, that's fine. And yeah, we have to make sure that we have the whole glass part the right shape, and something to consider as well is the size of it. With this, because it's a pretty controlled smoke, it's not going to be too wide at certain angles. Whereas I guess if it's more of an uncontrolled smoke, which we've done in the past with some of the houses or trees. Actually, I don't know if I've done a tree on this channel. I've done trees in my own time. They might have a bit more of a like thicker smoke plume, but not with this one that I'm doing. And I think we've actually made this side a bit too thick, so let's move back a little bit. Yeah, just a bit, or we just have to make this side match up a little bit, or we remove a whole bunch of this just because it doesn't quite look right. I think it does need to stay a bit thin. I'm not sure if you can hear it in the background, but my cat is currently at my door meowing. He wants to come in. But yeah, I think that's probably a good, the thickness, except for here, which is a bit too thick. So we'll just chisel it a little bit to make sure it's how we want. But I think that's pretty good. I think I'd like to actually move this out a bit, and so it kind of wiggles a little bit, if that makes sense. Let's see. Yeah, perfect. I like that. All right, so I'm pretty happy with this side, except let's maybe connect this top part a little bit. Just a bit. Yeah, just like that. That's perfect. Now let's fix this side. There we go. Now what I'm trying to do is to make sure these two aren't exactly the same. I guess the factory would have only turned on recently, or it's turned off recently. So the smoke hasn't quite reached the atmosphere as much, but I'm pretty happy with these shapes. Now, the other thing that I will do with glasswork is I just basically spam a whole bunch of the glass panes, and that just kind of blurs the edges a bit and just gives it a little bit more of like a, I guess, a texture, or a thicker color, I guess, to make the smoke look a bit more. So I just simply go around, and we've got fast place on, which is how we can place so quickly, which is really good for the glasswork like this. All right, so this side isn't quite done yet, but you can already see the difference. This side looks more of like a thick smoke, whereas this one just still looks a little bit unfinished. I'm not saying that this side looks finished at all, of course, but we can put a little bit more of this side. I think we need to, yeah, down the bottom here, I think needs a little bit more just to make it work a little bit. Yeah, that's a lot better. So let's do the same on this side. So there we go. We've added the... You okay, kitty? So yeah, we can see we've added the smoke on this side, and it's looking a lot more full than it did before, which is really nice. Now, I'm still thinking that this smoke might be a little too thin, just in comparison with the build, but I'm using the, not excuse, it was a plan, that it's been turned off or turned on recently. So it's kind of like dissipating. The smoke is just kind of like a thin steam. Or maybe it's just a very efficient factory that doesn't need to put a whole bunch of this in the atmosphere. Now, one other thing that I'm going to do as well is with the stained glass, I'm going to add like a few, not too many because it might overdo it, but just a few little spots so that it not as perfect and the smoke's kind of going around a little bit, just to keep it a bit more natural, because obviously smoke isn't a perfect circle. But just like that is pretty good, and we'll do it on this side as well. And just, yeah, that didn't really do anything actually. Let me fix it. Yeah. Now it roughens up the edges a little bit to make the smoke look a bit more real, I guess, a bit more normal. Now you can see as well we've got some light grey stained glass. Now I got the block, but I don't think we'll actually use it because I think it's a bit too big for the size of the smoke that we've got here. And that's just because I wasn't sure, so I grabbed it out just in case. But if the smoke was a bit bigger, I think some shading, which I'll show you in just a second, I promise, would have worked with the darker block or the full light grey block. But since we've got a bit of a thinner smoke, I don't think it'll work as well. However, we can still do a bit of shading, I hope, if it doesn't ruin it. Let's see. Nah, that looks fine. So basically what we're going to do is shade out where the shadows would be. So the smoke is pretty thick. It would cast a bit of a shadow, and that would be the same for underneath some parts of the smoke. Now, with actual fire smoke, there'd be a lot more. But as this isn't, we're just going to put a little bit every so often Not too much, just to give it a bit more of a form, you know, like a shape. So we'll do a little bit over there, and I think up here is going to be where the best part to do it will be. Yeah, I think that's nice. That just gives it a bit more of a shadow, a bit more of a texture. We might put a little bit down there. Yeah, that's really nice. Okay, let's do it on this side as well. All right, so yeah, just like that. So just a little bit of shading, which it doesn't really like show a whole bunch in terms of like how much effort it would have been. This side was actually a lot easier than that side, but just by adding a little bit of shading to give the smoke a bit more of a cloud look really helps. However, if you didn't want to do it, or you just didn't have the willpower to do it, the smoke on its own, just with one shade of glass, would also look great. And there's one more thing that I think would finalize this build completely, which would be some texturing or just terraining around. Now I think I'll have some time to do that later today, but I might just put it in a time lapse at the end of the video for you guys. For now, we'll just talk about the build itself and what I did mainly. Now that we finished the main build itself, we just haven't put it in a cool setting. So yeah, basically what we've got here is a factory, and I wanted to go for a bit of a red theme, or more of a rusted theme, but rust is a bit difficult to do in Minecraft just because, I mean, we don't have a rust block, so we have to use some weird blocks, and I definitely used some weird blocks because this is quite a weathered factory. The way that I got that look was I had some parts of the factory that were very faded, so I guess the sun's been hitting it, or it's just where the paint is not been replaced, something. And I weathered some of the areas. So we've got these three main sections that have been weathered, which is just done by using, you know, granite and bricks and terracotta, just little things that would lighten the color from the main color, which is the mangrove planks and the netherrack. We've even got some nether quartz ore, and that was just because I realized while building that that was a really good transitionary block. Because this is such a big build, looking from afar, the nether quartz, you don't notice the texture that it would usually have. Because from afar, it just looks like it's a bit of weathering, or it's having a better seamless transition into the weathered area from, I guess, the nicer area. So those are the reasons I used that main block palette. And of course, I had to use these bricks because I needed the walls and stairs and all sorts. I needed blocks that had that so that I could give this the depth that it needed, which it did, which I'm glad about. And to reinforce that depth as well, under the roof, we added some dark oak trapdoors. And that was just to give it a bit more of like an outline, I guess, to give it a harsh shadow. It may not feel noticeable, but I promise when it's not there, it is way more noticeable. Now, as we talked about under the roof, let's talk about the roof. So this roof took me a little bit longer than usual, and that was because I really wanted to get that rust idea perfect, and it was very difficult. So at first I just kind of randomly spammed where the rust was going to go, like the patches, and then I figured out the texturing up. So I put the basic colors that I was thinking about down in the basic blocks, which again, it's a very weird selection. We've got soul soil and ancient debris and note blocks, and then of course a little bit of dirt sprinkled here and there. And I had to make sure this, I guess, transitioned outwards in a way that made sense. So we transitioned to a lighter color and then moved from the lighter color to the tough, the generic normal color that's meant to be used for the build. But of course, it's weathered, it's old, we've got some new colours popping up here and there. And that's the same we did up here. We also added a little bit of copper ore, just the deep slate, because it doesn't change too much. It's really weird because the block itself is darker up close, but from afar, it's like almost the same colour, just slightly darker than tough. Like, it's really strange, but it's super cool. But that's also the same reason that I added some acacia wood. It's a very similar color, but it just gives it a bit more of like a weathered, textured look. And one of the other weird blocks we got here is, of course, some smokers. Just a bit of a strange block, but it works for the rust and the way that I wanted the build to look. Now with more weathering, we've got the big chimneys up here, which were also really difficult to do because I had to make the weathering make sense in a way. So I kept it quite dark down here because I feel like over here would be the most protected space from the elements. Because, I mean, the sun, it's kind of shaded. I guess the rain would hit here first, same with the sun, and even the smoke itself could damage the sides. So I had to make these sections a lot lighter, and we used a bunch of random blocks. Horn coral block, we've got waxed copper with dripstone blocks, just a bunch of random stuff, but they still have a very similar color palette so that it can still fit with the whole build, which was a really difficult task to do, but I think I did it pretty well. And I think they fit. The build fits together, which is one thing that I'm super happy about. Now up here we've just got another section which isn't as weathered, it isn't as detailed. I probably could have added some rust and weathering up here, but you know me, you know how I build face in front. This is where you view the build, you don't view it from a top. And from here you can't really see that back part because it's blocked by the chimneys. However, obviously it could be done with some weathering, just like over here, probably a lot more, maybe a lot lighter as well, because I guess the sun would hit here first. Same with the rain, it hasn't really got any other protection. But yeah, it wasn't a priority for the build. Now on the other side, we've got a bit of a different color palette. This is a lot darker, and this was my goal at some forced shadowing and forced lighting. So I wanted to make it seem like the sun or the viewer is got the light hitting straight ahead, and obviously the side would be a lot darker. So if you're viewing it from here and the sun is facing that way, the front of the build, then this side would be a lot darker. Now this also had some weird blocks used, but I actually really like the way that this is textured. We've got some darker spots, which could be just moisture or rust, just oldness. But it was very cool to try and pick the blocks and make it all make sense, especially with the depth and everything. Because for example here we've got the darker block, but because this depth part is outer block, it would realistically be a bit lighter. And my cat is still banging at my door. He wants to come in. I'll let him in a second. And I had to do that for a few spots, which was really fun to kind of figure out. There's also some weird blocks used here. We've got more soul sand, soul soil, a lot of dirt. Dirt is actually really helpful for these kind of weathered brown looks for building. And I've also decided to put some of the red here so it's kind of, I guess, phasing into the brown color that's around. I've got it in a few spots just where the front would be, and that really helped pull it together and also just helped with the weathering effect. Now a little small detail over here which I really like, I added some frog lights just behind the stair detail, and it's because I wanted like a white background, but when I used white concrete it just kind of shaded itself really badly, so it wasn't super vibrant. You couldn't really tell that there was something behind it. However, when I use the frog lights, because they emit light, you can actually tell that there's like a little, I guess, shine or sheen. I don't know, it was just a really interesting touch and I like it. It was a fun thing to add. On the other side, this is literally exactly the same as the other side. I just flipped it to finish the build, to close off, and on the back of the build is it exists. I'm sure it exists. But yeah, that's basically the whole build. It was a lot of fun to work on it, and I'm very keen about the results. The little smoke detail we did together was a very good addition, so I'm happy that we've done that. And the whole factory itself turned out a lot better than I thought. I wasn't sure. It wasn't a build I planned out. It was just something I decided on a whim, and I'm glad that it worked out in the end. But yeah, that's about all we've got time for the video. I hope you enjoyed the build and the video, and if I did some of the training, I guess stick around for the little time lapse and having some nice music to chill off with while you watch me do some terraining work. Woo! Super fun! But otherwise, yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video and you liked the build. Let me know your thoughts, and if you have anything else you want me to build, something specific that you haven't seen before or you just want to see me try, I will definitely give it a go, or do my best to at least. But yeah, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye!